The reason we have this video at all is because Mello himself posted this supposedly happy moment to his own social media as a way to celebrate. It was about 9 o'clock the next morning. This was supposed to be the start of their new life together. An engagement caught on camera with a thrilled bride-to-be. But just hours after this heartwarming video, this man allegedly murdered his new fiancée, stabbing her to death. Today's story takes us to Elizabeth, New Jersey, not too far from New York. On December 29th, 52-year-old Jose Mello got down on one knee and proposed to his girlfriend, 31-year-old Niket Trinidad Maldonado. You can see this for yourself in the video, showing Mello pop the question in a New Jersey bar.
Yo, she don't even look that excited, to be honest.
The reason we have this video at all is because Mello himself posted this supposedly happy moment to his own social media as a way to celebrate. It was about 9 o'clock the next morning, though, on December 30th, when police responded to reports of a stabbing. Inside a home, police discovered Maldonado's body. She was pronounced dead at the scene, and investigators have since revealed she was stabbed to death. A few days later, on January 2nd, her newfound fiancé was arrested. Jose Mello now faces multiple charges, including first-degree murder, third-degree possession of a weapon for unlawful purpose, and fourth-degree unlawful possession of a weapon. This isn't Mello's first run-in with the law either. He's actually already a registered sex offender in New Jersey after a 2010 conviction. Back then, he attacked a woman with a box cutter before sexually assaulting her. It's unclear what led up to that attack or the attack of Maldonado. So far, investigators haven't revealed a motive, so we still have a lot of questions. What we do know about Maldonado comes from a GoFundMe page created by her aunt. According to the posting, Maldonado mostly went by the nickname Nakey. Her aunt writes that Nakey was senselessly taken in an act of evil. According to the post, Maldonado left behind 2 young children who are now left orphaned with no parents. She didn't have a large family base in New Jersey either. Most of her family is either in Florida or Puerto Rico. Funds from the GoFundMe page will go to support Maldonado's funeral in Florida and her eventual burial in Puerto Rico, where she's originally from. So let's take a closer look at this case. For that, we're going to bring in Anthony Osso. You're a criminal defense attorney, but I really wanted to talk to you today because of your work as a prosecutor in the domestic violence division. So right away, does this sound like domestic violence to you?
Absolutely. You've got an engaged couple, and an altercation between them ultimately is fatal, and that is textbook domestic violence.
You mentioned that they were engaged, and that's something that's so interesting about this story. We have this video that's posted to social media. They look like they're in love. They're telling each other they love each other, exchanging the ring. It looks fantastic. And then all of a sudden we have her murdered less than 24 hours later. I mean, that's a bit conflicting to me. I guess, does it just show that social media isn't real life? Things may not be what they seem.
She doesn't look happy, though. Like,
you've read my mind. I think it just goes to show that what you see on social media isn't necessarily what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah. And oftentimes when there's turmoil in a relationship, the abuser will do things like that, sort of to show love and affection, to keep the other party interested and involved in the relationship.
Oh, that's interesting, because I mean, getting married is basically the ultimate thing you can do to commit to someone in a relationship. So we're having this major proposal, and then again, less than 24 hours, the worst thing you can do to someone in murdering them. So do you think potentially he was proposing to her to kind of keep her with him rather than her leaving or escaping the relationship?
Based on the little information we know, I can't say for certain, but I know that it's an ongoing investigation. And I imagine that the investigators are going to want to find out what the relationship was like leading up to that point. And something like that, a murder doesn't happen overnight. So I think that we'll find that that's a possibility, that it was some sort of way to keep her involved in the relationship.
You mentioned the past of their relationship, and that immediately crossed my mind too. Like, how long have these two been together? What was their relationship like in the past? Were police involved? Was family and friends, were they concerned? All things like that. So is that something investigators are really going to take a deep dive into, their past relationship?
Absolutely. In murder cases, typically, you're allowed to get into, in the trial setting, you're allowed to get into the nature of the relationship in order to establish what it was like between the couple or the people that were involved, the victim and the alleged murderer. So in this case, I don't think there were witnesses. I think it was only two of them at the residence when she was stabbed. That leaves a lot of room for defense to bring up self-defense arguments or sudden passion type arguments. And it's important for investigators to talk to people surrounding them to really get an idea of what their relationship truly was like.
And the next question too is not only what was their relationship like and were there any red flags, but leading up to the murder, we don't know what happened. I'm assuming there's some sort of fight, but we can't even say that for sure. We don't know what an argument could have been about. Is that something investigators are also going to look into, the moments right before this stabbing?
Certainly it is. It's more difficult because I don't think that they have eyewitnesses. So they're going to have to be more creative. They're going to have to look through potentially the victim and the defendant's cell phone to try and see if they can look at communication between the two of them to see what was going on in their minds. The physical evidence throughout the crime scene, were there things thrown across the ground? Did it look like there was a struggle? Does the defendant have defensive wounds? Does she have additional wounds that weren't from a knife? Or a sharp object that could cause a stabbing. So there's a lot of things that the investigators are going to need to find out during their investigation in this case.
And you mentioned cell phones, which is something I talk about in pretty much every story I cover because we all have our phone with ourselves. Sometimes we have our extra phone for work. I mean, it has so many details. And you mentioned their conversations probably via text or maybe even social media. But do you think investigators are going to dig a little deeper too to see who else they were talking to? I mean, I'm just spitballing here. We don't have this confirmed or anything, but potentially if there was infidelity, one of them is talking to another person, something like that. Are they going to make sure to get all the info from the phone?
Sure. I think any information like that, like potential infidelity, where they're talking to other people, I think that could be really useful evidence if you're a prosecutor to say, well, here's the motive for the defendant to commit the crime, right? And motive can be used to show intent, and that's really important when you're talking about a murder trial or a murder case.
And I know we've been talking a lot about the things we don't know. We still have so many questions that we're hoping to have answered.
Right.
But what we do know is that she was stabbed to death. And immediately whenever I hear this, the fact that we have the suspect who allegedly stabbed her and killed her, that is such an intimate way to kill someone. It's physically exerting your body, but also you have to be very close to them. You have to continually stab her. We don't know how many times, but again, more than once, I'm assuming. Does that factor in at all? Is that something that prosecutors are going to highlight, that this was such an intimate crime?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, gruesome is the word that comes to mind when I think of a stabbing case. And it's a very intimate way to kill somebody. It's a very violent way to kill somebody, and it's not typically instant. So I imagine that the prosecutors will lean into that heavily. And from a defense perspective, they may try to use it to say, well, sharp objects are easily accessible. And if I've got to think that they've got to go with a self-defense argument here, they're probably going to lean into that it was an object used for self-defense.
If we're talking about self-defense and what sort of story he could bring to the table, you said that's going to be their route, likely is self-defense. But how do they prove it if there's no witnesses except for him?
Sure. It's plausible. I don't know for certain that that's what they will do, but it's a possibility. I don't know that identity is going to be the route that they can go because he was the only person on scene.
Right.
But But looking at the physical evidence, his testimony potentially, but I think that there's some prior criminal history which will limit his ability to take the stand in any trial.
Mm-hmm.
So it's likely going to come down to the physical evidence on scene.
You brought up the prior criminal history, and that's a great segue because I want to talk about that
Bro,
too.
she acting,
Back
bro.
in 2010, he was convicted. He threatened this woman with a box cutter. So again, another sharp object. And then he apparently sexually assaulted her. So he's on the sex offender registry as of now. He's been convicted of this crime. So right away, I'm thinking prior bad acts.
She was the
kind
sexual
of similar
assault.
in a way. This woman wasn't killed, but a similar crime. Is that something that the prosecution could bring in?
You see the face?
It would require the defense to open the door, likely. They're not just going to be able to bring in that evidence, right? You can't say because someone committed this crime on X date, they committed this crime on Y date. But if the defendant were to take the stand or a witness were to make a statement like he would never commit a violent act, well, then you've completely opened the door to his prior criminal history.
Right. Yeah,
so in that case, prosecutors would be able to get into that evidence.
The testimony is really what I keep circling around because obviously in any case, I as a viewer want to see the defendant on the stand. It's up to them. But oftentimes we see it when it's a self-defense case, especially in this instance when there's no other witnesses. Do you think it's a good idea, bad idea? What do you expect in all of that?
I think it depends entirely on the facts of the case, the relationship between the complainant and the defendant and who the defendant is. It doesn't sound like, just based on his criminal history, that he's the kind of person that you probably would want to put on a witness stand. But that's just my 2 cents on the little bit of information I have at this point in time. So it just depends.
Yeah, I guess we'll see which route he decides to go, his defense decides to go. The next question I have for you too is back to that proposal video, because that's really, I mean, we're thinking about people getting engaged. We see it all the time on social media. It's usually a really happy occasion, and we don't often see a complete switch in this way. I'm wondering if that video can be used in the trial, if it does go to jury trial, that jurors could watch and see the stark difference between getting engaged and being in love and this stabbing to death murder.
Mm-hmm. There's no guarantees in law, but I can almost guarantee that the jury would see that video. It's textbook nature of the relationship. And I think that the prosecutor will really want to play into that to say he went from this one day to violent murder the next day. So I think that will be shown.
What is your guess? Do you think this will end in a plea deal or it should go to jury trial?
I think that the investigators need to uncover more facts before I can really say. But just my knowledge of the judicial system, most cases don't go to trial. So if I had to guess, it probably will work out before trial takes place. But again, I think the investigation's ongoing, and I'll be interested to see what they uncover over the next few months.
Yeah, it's definitely one that we'll want to follow and see what happens next. But overall, really tough case. Our hearts go out to her friends and family. Anthony, thank you for coming on and breaking it all down for us.
Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
I'll give you my take on it. You know, just judging, and I'm surprised that they can't see it themselves in the video. She clearly don't look happy, you know, and like they stated, you know, you can see countless of these type of videos online and on social media, and I can see a clear difference in her excitement and her emotions and her movement. I mean, even when she's turning away, and look at him, how he looks at her, almost looking for her reaction. That's, you know, you got to really, really pay attention really close. Like, she doesn't look happy. And then when you go back to half the photos that they've taken together, she's not really smiling in half of the photos. He's smiling, but she's not really smiling, or at least it looks forced to me. You know what I mean? So, again, unfortunate situation. RP to her. I feel like what it was is that she probably, and he did it in public and then wanted to turn around and post it almost as if a way to trap her. Like, it was peer pressure done here. Like, you know, I'm gonna do this in public. She's gonna say, yeah, she's not gonna embarrass him in front of everybody, but then turned around when they probably got in private and pretty much called it off, or, you know, told him she didn't want to be with him, and he probably snapped. That's what I'm guessing. Just from history and just covering these type of stories, you know, I can almost imagine that's what was going on, because she kind of looked like she's just stuck. I don't know. That's just my opinion, though. You know what I mean? She kind of looked like she was stuck in a relationship, probably wanted out. He probably pulled that stunt, and she was like, nah, I'm not gonna, you know, so... And hey, that was the result, man. And like I say, it's an unfortunate event, RIP. And for him, y'all already know how it go. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. Peace. Yeah, whoa.